Throwaway account for obvious reasons and spare me the lecture about airing private business online. My parents already tried that angle and look where it got them. I'm 31. Until this year, I honestly believed my family was normal, mildly overbearing, uncomfortably religious around election season, but otherwise the sort of folks who waved from the porch and lent neighbors lawn chairs for block parties. I left home at 18 for college 2 states away, visited on holidays, and kept the conversations pleasant. Nothing in those years hinted that my biggest enemy was sharing blood with me, drinking coffee at the same kitchen island where I learned long division. Background matters. In junior high, my dad drilled 2 rules into my brothers and me. Never carry a credit card balance and never talk finances with outsiders. I took those to heart. While friends racked up student loans, I hustled scholarships, sold class notes, and stocked shelves at a grocery warehouse that smelled like overripe bananas. I graduated with a business degree and exactly $287 in debt, which I paid the day the first bill arrived just to see the balance read 0. I rented cheap, kept my 2002 Civic alive with duct tape and optimism, and funneled 50% of every paycheck into a savings account nicknamed Keys. The goal: buy a small house before hitting 32. The thought of handing rent to a landlord forever made my teeth itch. I tracked everything in spreadsheets colored red and green like holiday lights. By last December, the number in green hit $68,000, enough for a down payment and closing costs on a starter place in my metro area. That's when I contacted a mortgage broker recommended by a coworker. We joked about interest rates, pulled my credit, and scheduled a sit-down for pre-approval. He sounded impressed. I felt invincible. Exactly 48 hours later, he called again. This time, his voice had gone brittle. "I'm sorry," he said, "but I can't submit the application. Your debt-to-income ratio disqualifies you." My stomach dropped. "What debt?" He asked whether I'd co-signed anything in 2017, 2019, 2020, or last spring. I laughed because I avoid co-signing like open water after watching shark documentaries. He read the list anyway. 4 unsecured personal loans, 3 credit cards, and a store financing plan for patio furniture from a retailer I'd never visited. Each account showed my name, social security number, and parents' address as the billing location. Balances totaled $142,000. None had seen a payment in half a year. The broker paused, giving me space to explain. I heard myself breathe like someone else sucking for air. He suggested identity theft, advised freezing my credit, then emailed the reports. I thanked him, hung up, walked to the break room, and vomited into a recycling bin. I drove straight to my apartment, ignoring texts from my manager, and opened every document. The signatures looked like my mother trying to copy my handwriting after 2 glasses of boxed wine, close but crooked. One creditor file even attached a scanned copy of my driver's license. I'd never lost my ID, which meant someone had made a photocopy while I was oblivious. In shock, I dialed Mom. She answered with her usual chirp. The moment I mentioned loan statements, the chirp collapsed into static. She stuttered about helping the family get through a rough patch and promised they would take care of it soon. Before I could ask how long soon was, she passed the phone to Dad. He didn't apologize. He opened with, "You owe us gratitude for covering your tuition. Every parent sacrifices." I reminded him my scholarships covered tuition. Their only contribution was an old laptop. He pivoted to guilt. "Your sister's medical bills threw everything off." My sister sprained an ankle that year, hardly a financial disaster. I asked why nobody told me. He said, "You were busy living your life." I hung up when my vision tunneled. That night, I compiled a to-do list: credit freeze, police report, FTC identity theft affidavit, appointment with a consumer protection lawyer named Herrera, who'd once guest lectured at my company about cybersecurity. I booked him for noon next day. I also moved my money to a different bank on the off chance my parents knew my old login. Herrera listened quietly while I spilled the story. He didn't look surprised. "Family fraud is more common than you think," he said, pushing a packet across the desk. "It hurts worse, though." He laid out the path: dispute letters to creditors, potential criminal charges, and a civil suit to force repayment. He warned me it would be tedious and that parents often weaponize emotions. I signed the engagement agreement anyway. Revenge, I've learned, looks like paperwork. Weeks crawled by letterhead after letterhead. Collectors either went silent or snarled. One agent accused me of staging the scam for debt forgiveness. I recorded that call and sent the MP3 to Herrera, who responded with legal threats that made the agent apologize in writing. Mom rang every couple days, alternating between sobbing confessions and manipulative snipes about my heart of stone. Dad's tactic was quieter, passive-aggressive texts quoting proverbs about honoring parents. I saved everything. Amid that chaos, a white envelope with gilded edges arrived. My cousin Megan's wedding invitation. July 10th. The reception hall listed on the card was the most expensive venue in our county. Family Grapevine said my parents were paying half as their gift. I RSVP'd yes, immediately sensing opportunity like a chess player spotting checkmate 3 moves ahead. Plan formation consumed me. Reddit revenge threads taught me that public exposure cuts deepest when the target worships appearances. Linda and Jeff wore reputation like armor, so I gathered ammunition. I ordered certified credit reports, subpoenas revealed loan application IP addresses matching my parents' home router, and the notary who'd stamped a line of documents remembered Dad bragging about helping his kid buy property. Herrera grinned as the pile thickened. I created a binder, tabbed sections, color-coded, footnoted. The cover sheet read evidence packet, property of my name. I printed 15 copies, sealed each in a plastic sleeve, and stashed them in a tote bag matching my bridesmaid dress. Megan insisted I stand beside her. I rehearsed a toast in front of my mirror until I could recite it without blinking. Wedding day arrived. I avoided small talk with Mom while we lined up for photos. Her fake pearls trembled on her neck. Dad avoided me entirely, nursing bourbon near the bar. During the ceremony, I focused on Megan's vows and ignored 2 sets of eyes boring into the back of my head. At the reception, the DJ gestured toward the open mic for toasts. Best man spoke first, then Megan's sorority friend told a story about dorm pranks. Applause, laughter, clink of glasses. I stood. "Congratulations, Megan and Luke," I began, voice steady. I thanked them for including me, mentioned childhood memories, warmed the crowd. Then I breathed twice and pivoted. "I almost missed today because I was supposed to close on my first house this week." Murmurs of excited support. Unfortunately, I discovered someone took out loans in my name, the same someone who taught me right and wrong. Silence dropped. I walked to my parents' table, binder in hand. I clicked a remote that lit the projector screen behind the head table. Yes, I borrowed the venue's HDMI port earlier and queued a PDF. Page 1 filled the screen, a loan document bearing my forged signature. Gasps popped like popcorn. I spoke into the mic. "Dad, Mom, notice the address field? That's your living room." Page 2 displayed a credit card statement mailed to their P.O. box. Page 3 showed the notary's affidavit. Dad's face purpled. Mom whispered, "Stop." I ignored them. "Effective Monday," I announced, "you'll be served with a civil suit demanding repayment plus damages. I've also filed a criminal complaint. The rest of you may wonder why I'm ruining a wedding. I'm not. The theft ruined a dream. I'm simply returning the spotlight." I closed the presentation, handed Megan a fresh USB with copies in case my parents try claiming defamation, and walked off to stunned applause from some cousins and horrified silence from others. Security ushered my parents outside when Dad started shouting. Megan hugged me backstage and whispered thanks for defending boundaries experts talk about in therapy. Fallout was nuclear. My parents drove home to process servers waiting. Aunt Sarah live-streamed the handoff to our family Facebook group because apparently drama outranks privacy now. Comments racked up lightning fast, half lilies of sympathy, half pitchforks of outrage. Mom tried posting a defense. Admins removed it. Herrera filed the suit for full restitution. $142,000 principal, accrued interest, legal fees, punitive damages. Their lawyer counteroffered 50% and demanded confidentiality. We rejected it. Discovery uncovered even uglier details. Dad had drawn a home equity line against his late mother's property and funneled money into my debt to delay defaults, gambling on inheriting a trust that never materialized. Emails showed Mom coaching him on forging my signature with practice sheets. Herrera said, "Depositions were brutal. I had to sit across a mahogany table while Dad claimed he'd planned to surprise me with a remodel once the loans were handled. He described the theft as temporary borrowing. I asked why interest kept compounding if the plan was repayment. He shrugged at the camera. Mom cried about church reputation, insisted she'd prayed daily for a solution. I asked whether God signed my name on six-figure contracts. Herrera objected to my sarcasm. I didn't care. After depositions, our side filed a motion for summary judgment. The judge hinted he was inclined to grant it. Dad's lawyer blinked like a man whose fishing boat just sprang leaks. They requested mediation. I met them in a bland conference center room smelling like burnt coffee and surrendered dignity. Final terms: full repayment within 90 days, an extra 50 grand punitive, written apology materials to be kept sealed only if they paid on schedule. Miss one payment, the apology goes public, and we pro. They sold their lakeside cottage in 48 days and auctioned Dad's Corvette to meet the deadline. Watching the cashier's check clear into my escrow felt orgasmic. No exaggeration. My actual body tingled. I zeroed the fraudulent accounts, paid Herrera's invoice, and invested leftovers. Credit repair took persistence. Phone queues, certified letters, re-explanations to each bureau. It wasn't glamorous, but 6 months later, my score rebounded higher than before the fiasco. The bungalow I'd wanted earlier had sold, but a Craftsman fixer-upper hit the market in the same school district. I toured, liked the flow, and made an aggressive offer backed by my now pristine credit and hefty down payment. Offer accepted. 2 months later, I carried paint swatches through rooms echoing with possibility, not betrayal. I didn't invite my parents to the housewarming. My guest list included friends who'd Venmo'd coffee money during lawsuits, a few supportive cousins, and Herrera, who arrived with a monogrammed doormat reading Veni Vidi Vici. We toasted with supermarket champagne. I felt lighter than ever. Family dynamics collapsed predictably. Grandparents tried mediating. I refused. Mom mailed letters thick with scripture about forgiveness. Each went unopened into a fireproof safe labeled future evidence. Dad's silence persisted until a cousin leaked that he blamed me for ruining his chance at becoming deacon. Apparently, fraud disqualifies you from handling church funds. Who knew? Therapy helped unpack residual guilt. My therapist said betrayal by parents fractures the root assumption of safety and that anger is a seatbelt preventing further harm. She assigned homework: write a letter to my younger self, reassuring her adulthood could still be free. I wrote it, cried, burned it in the barbecue pit, and learned ashes don't leave stains if you hose the concrete immediately. Work thrived. Negotiating with creditors made salary talks feel trivial. I earned a promotion to operations manager and doubled my emergency fund within a year. I also met my partner, Sam, at a trivia night when we both answered a question about obscure password algorithms. Sam listened to my saga without flinching and told me their boundary standards just got higher. We moved slowly, and when Sam eventually proposed, on a Ferris wheel because life needs whimsy, I said yes without checking my bank app. Our wedding is next spring. Guest list is modest, no open mic. Vows will be short, cake will be chocolate, and phones will be collected at the door to prevent surprise recordings. I'm catering tacos because fancy beef medallions taste like rubber. Every so often, someone asks if I'll ever forgive my parents. I explain forgiveness isn't a coupon code you apply to erase interest charges. It's a personal decision that can't be guilted or demanded. Maybe one day I'll feel indifferent enough to let them fade into background noise instead of active no contact. But forgiveness? That's a luxury they declined when they printed my name on loan papers. For now, silence is peace. I wake up in my own house, brew good coffee, and walk barefoot across floors I paid for myself. The absence of their voices is louder than church bells, but much more honest. I post this here because yesterday I learned the final credit bureau removed the last fraudulent inquiry, officially restoring my score. The fight lasted 19 months, cost $23,000 in legal fees, and aged me 5 years, but I won. If anyone finds themselves squinting at a credit report that feels like reading a nightmare, know this: you can win too. Gather evidence, build allies, and remember that shame belongs to the thief, not the victim. Lessons I wish schools taught. Check your credit at least twice a year. Identity theft often hides behind loved ones' smiles. Keep your social security card locked away. Childhood you doesn't picture a parent photocopying it for personal gain. Document every conversation. Screenshots aren't petty, they're armor. Therapy is as important as legal action. Money isn't the only thing stolen. Revenge isn't evil if it's justice wearing work boots. I didn't burn bridges, I built new ones from the old splinters and walked across. My parents stand on the far bank, hands full of ashes they thought were gold. They're welcome to shout apologies across the gap, but I'm too busy painting my front porch railing to notice. To the strangers reading, thanks for the anonymous companionship Reddit offers. To my parents, if you somehow recognize my cadence even behind a throwaway, the day you chose debt over decency, you signed away the privilege of my silence. May the echo of this post remind you every time you consider borrowing someone else's future. I'm closing my laptop now. The living room needs another coat of primer, and Sam just came home with burritos. Life, unlike credit scores, doesn't need to be perfect to be good. Freeze your credit immediately across all bureaus. It's free and reversible. File an FTC identity theft report. This gives you rights under the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Document every contact. Phone logs, emails, screenshots. Future, you will thank you. Consult a lawyer who specializes in consumer protection, not family law. Expertise matters. Therapy, therapy, therapy. Your brain needs a mechanic as much as your credit does. Understand that revenge and justice can overlap. Don't let polite society shame self-preservation. Growing up, money was the love language my parents spoke at top volume, even when pretending it wasn't. Birthdays meant envelopes with $50 bills taped inside greeting cards, followed by long monologues about how hard Dad had worked for that paper, how I should be grateful to the sweat that paid for it. Mom clipped coupons with the same sanctity some parents reserved for bedtime stories, preaching fiscal morality while eyeing the neighbor's new SUV. When I was 9, she made me return a quarter. Our church reinforced the hierarchy. Every December, the pastor invited families on stage to brag about blessings, new jobs, shiny engagement rings, mortgage payoffs. Dad took the mic 3 years running, spotlighting himself as a self-made example while nudging us kids to wave. The congregation applauded. I learned applause could be bought with the right narrative. So did my parents. Signs of entitlement popped up like weeds during college breaks. Mom asked for my banking password in case of emergency. I refused, offering instead to set up text alerts. She guilt-tripped for days, lecturing that secrecy was sin. I held firm, a small but important rebellion. Dad tried convincing me to add him as an authorized user on my one credit card to boost his travel points. I declined, citing the card's low limit. He sulked. At the time, I thought it was just control issues. I didn't imagine that. The night after discovering the fraudulent loans, I barely slept. I sat at my desk, screen glow painting everything clinical, clicking through each creditor website. One account showed a withdrawal labeled Family Reunion Catering. Another displayed charges for a water ski package Dad had bragged about in last year's holiday newsletter. It felt like watching a home movie of betrayal frame by frame. With each line item, I remembered moments. Mom flouncing into a boutique with bags, Dad boasting about some. Calling the lenders felt like digging fingers into a socket, necessary pain. Some representatives were sympathetic, others recited scripts about privacy and suggested I settle. One supervisor implied I must have signed under pressure from a boyfriend and was now blaming parents to dodge responsibility. I recorded every syllable. The exhaustion of explaining my innocence over and over forged a new muscle inside me. Endurance born of fury. 3 weeks into the credit siege, a debt collector showed up at my apartment building, business card wedged in my doorframe. He wore cologne strong enough to stun a bee and tried serving me papers for default judgments on 2 of the loans. Herrera later told me they were fishing, hoping I'd roll over. Instead, I photographed the man, faxed a cease and desist, and added the incident to our complaint. Small victories matter when the war threatens to swallow you. Meanwhile, extended family took sides like it was a sporting event. Aunt Denise messaged me paragraphs about forgiveness. Uncle Rob sent a single line, "Hit them hard, kid." Cousin Tyler called and admitted Dad had once asked him to co-sign something for tax reasons. Tyler said no, but the conversation now chilled him. He volunteered a character statement for court. Work-life blurred. I spent lunch breaks in concrete stairwells, fielding calls from credit bureaus and Herrera. My boss noticed circles under my eyes and quietly approved overtime pay to offset legal costs. Co-workers whispered guesses. Divorce, illness, gambling debt. I ignored the gossip because explaining would shatter the thin shell holding my composure. The only respite came from Ben and Lacey, my roommates. They declared Tuesday nights mandatory movie therapy, where we'd watch terrible action films and yell drinking game phrases whenever someone said classified. Cheap laughter steadied me. On one of those nights, Lacey handed me a worn paperback about boundaries. I read it cover to cover at 3 a.m., underlining sentences about how love without respect isn't love at all. Let's rewind to the wedding plan because many of you want the play-by-play. 2 days beforehand, I visited the reception hall under a tech setup pretense. The coordinator, a 22-year-old named Kendra, happily showed me the AV closet. I preloaded my slideshow on their presentation laptop, then swapped the default desktop image for a copy so even a reboot wouldn't kill it. Redundancy saves lives. I also verified the mic batteries were fresh. Nothing ruins exposure like technical glitches. On the actual day, I dressed early, slipped the binder into a tote, and rehearsed calm breathing. My sister, oblivious to everything, chatted about her new job while curling my hair. Mom bustled through the bridal suite, offering fake smiles that slid off her face whenever our eyes met. She asked if we could talk later, voice dripping contrition. I nodded, lying. During the toast, right before I revealed the fraud, I looked at Megan. She sensed something big, squeezed my hand under the table, and whispered, "Do what you need to." That permission cracked open fear like an egg. The silence after my reveal was the deepest sound I've ever heard, an intake of collective breath so strong it felt physical. Dad's outrage sputtered the moment security intervened. Apparently, the venue had a strict policy about public disturbances. Mom clutched her pearls like a Victorian he. When news hit social media, responses were visceral. Childhood friends messaged disbelief. Former teachers sent encouraging emojis. A random classmate I hadn't spoken to in 12 years mailed me a Starbucks gift card with the note, "For court coffee, go get 'em." Small kindnesses quilted together a sense of community, patching holes my family once filled. Legal motions drag, so let's accelerate. Over months, hearings were scheduled, postponed, rescheduled. My parents' lawyer attempted everything, claiming I'd given oral permission, alleging password theft, proposing private arbitration. Herrera dismantled each argument methodically. I attended every hearing in a tailored Navy suit I'd bought secondhand for $50 and altered myself. Opposing counsel mispronounced my name twice. Each time I corrected him politely. Every detail matters when proving you. The apology letter they eventually penned was 12 pages single-spaced, reviewed by both lawyers. It described the theft, the burden, and the unmeasurable hurt they'd caused. Court rules allowed me to seal it unless they defaulted. Sometimes I opened the safe just to read the first line. We betrayed the trust of our daughter. The admission tastes better than revenge fantasies ever did. After settlement, strangers online asked whether I felt empty now that the fight was over. The answer is complicated. Victory doesn't erase damage. It builds a foundation for rebuilding. I still startled when my phone buzzed, half expecting another collector. I still double-checked locks, but a tiny voice inside stopped apologizing for existing. Home ownership tasks grounded me. I learned to replace outlets, patch drywall, and budget for a plumber after a hilarious garbage disposal snafu. Each completed task reaffirmed autonomy. Saturday mornings, I'd blast music, paint trim, and laugh when I splattered my jeans, because ruinable jeans are proof of stability. You only worry about stains when you own things worth staining. By the way, credit repair companies can be predators. I vetted 3 before hiring one that billed hourly instead of percentage of savings. If anyone's curious, file disputes yourself first. Only outsource when time becomes more valuable than money. Around month 8 of no contact, Mom tried a new tactic. She dropped off a casserole at my front door, even though I'd never shared my new address. Seeing her handwriting on the foil pan jolted my chest like defibrillator paddles. I donated the food to a shelter and installed a video doorbell that afternoon. Herrera sent them a formal notice. Any uninvited visit would violate harassment laws. The visit stopped. Random detail, the cousin whose wedding I ruined sent me photos later. Apparently, guests still talk about the most memorable toast in family history. Luke, her husband, admitted it was the first time he'd seen genuine accountability at a family event. Megan and Luke now host game nights. We've grown closer than ever. Funny how truth rearranges alliances. Therapy nugget. My counselor taught me a visualization called the bank vault. Imagine your mental energy as cash. Every interaction either deposits or withdraws. My parents' calls used to overdraft the account before I even answered. Going no contact slammed the vault door. Wealth isn't just financial. Let's discuss Sam, because love deserves screen time even in revenge sagas. We met at that trivia night months after the legal dust settled. Sam wore a hoodie with a pixelated heart and corrected the host's pronunciation of Euler. Our team won by 1 point. Celebratory nachos turned into a 2 a.m. conversation about autonomy, trust, and the ethics of revenge. Sam listened to my story without flinching, then said, "You protected your future. That's not revenge, that's self-defense." I knew I'd found a key. Our relationship moved at a pace that felt like walking on solid ground after years of tightrope. When Sam proposed atop a Ferris wheel, I laughed so hard the car swayed. The ring isn't extravagant, small sapphire, silver band, but I paid for it, which mattered to me symbolically. Independence doesn't preclude partnership, it frames it. Wedding planning unlocked a new layer of reflection. Guest list decisions forced me to articulate boundaries. We sent a single certified letter to my parents. "You are not invited, please respect this decision." They never responded. I worry sometimes they'll crash out of spite, but Sam hired private security as a just-in-case gift. Peace of mind can be budgeted. You might wonder about siblings. I have 2 younger brothers and the sister with the sprained ankle. Brother 1 texted twice during the lawsuit. Neutral emoji, thumbs up. Brother 2 stayed radio silent until the settlement cleared, then asked if I could loan him money for dental work. I recommended a payment plan through his dentist. He ghosted. My sister, shockingly, sided with me after reading the evidence. We meet for coffee occasionally and keep conversations light, shows, pets, nothing heavy. An interesting statistic Herrera shared. Over 60% of identity theft cases he handles involve relatives. Society loves stranger danger narratives, but sometimes the call is coming from inside the house. Literally, people kept suggesting reconciliation using lines like, "You only get one set of parents." The phrase irritated me until I coined my reply. "I only get one credit score too. They stole it." Oddly enough, that shuts people up faster than emotional pleas. Financially, I'm ahead now. The punitive damages chunk went into index funds at the market dip last year and grew nicely. I started a side hustle consulting young professionals on budget strategies, partly as therapy, partly profit. Turns out surviving financial betrayal makes you a credible advisor. I donate 10% of that income to a scholarship at my alma mater in Herrera's name. Full circle, maybe. Last holiday season, I received a group text from Mom with a photo of my parents volunteering at a soup kitchen captioned, "We've changed." The message included the entire extended family. I didn't reply, but Uncle Rob did. "Tell the IRS, they'll care more." Someone left the chat, pretty sure it was Dad. I still get flashbacks. Signing mortgage refinance papers triggered a wave of anxiety so strong I had to excuse myself to the restroom. I looked in the mirror, repeated my legal name aloud. I belong to me. It helped. I've learned to celebrate milestones unapologetically. First property tax bill, framed the stub as art. DIY bookshelf, posted a photo thread showing crooked progress. Sam says I radiate homeowner energy now. Apparently, that means commenting on insulation like a proud parent. Sometimes late at night, I open my safe and read the apology letter, not to relish their downfall, but to remind myself gaslighting loses its power once typed in 12-point Times New Roman. One page describes how they forged my signature by tracing it against a window's glass. The thought used to twist my stomach. Now it just confirms the depth of their choice. Before closing, I want to address the ethical elephant. Did I go too far publicly humiliating them? Maybe. But shame is an appropriate response to theft committed under the banner of love. Private conversations were off the table the moment they mortgaged my identity without consent. Transparency wasn't pettiness, it was disinfectant. If you're facing a similar nightmare, here's a compact action list Herrera and I refined. Freeze your credit immediately across all bureaus. It's free and reversible. File an FTC identity theft report. This gives you rights under the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Document every contact. Phone logs, emails, screenshots. Future, you will thank you. Consult a lawyer who specializes in consumer protection, not family law. Expertise matters. Therapy, therapy, therapy. Your brain needs a mechanic as much as your credit does. Understand that revenge and justice can overlap. Don't let polite society shame self-preservation. Okay, sermon over. I used to envision adulthood as a timeline. Graduate, career, house, kids, retire on a porch swing. Reality forked. Betrayal inserted a plot twist I wouldn't wish on anyone, yet carving my own path after that detour makes the view sharper. Every ceiling fan I install, every midnight snack from my own fridge, every quiet morning reading invoices for my consulting side hustle, they're ordinary miracles. Yesterday, Sam and I planted a dwarf lemon tree in the backyard. As we tamped soil, I realized trees don't care about the past. They grow where they're rooted, leveraging whatever nutrients exist. I choose to mimic the lemon tree. My parents can sour an occasional memory, but they can't stop growth they'll never witness. If you made it this far, thank you for your curiosity. Sharing this took more courage than the wedding microphone because the internet is forever and the troll brigade never sleeps. But transparency is worth some insomnia. I survived, I rebuilt, and I'm thriving with scars turned into roadmaps. One final anecdote. Last month, my old Civic finally died. Transmission kaput. Instead of mourning, Sam and I towed it to a scrapyard, signed the title over for $50, and laughed. That car saw me through grinding poverty and legal warfare. Retiring it felt ceremonially appropriate. We walked home holding hands, talking about maybe adopting a rescue dog once the wedding settles. I didn't check my bank app once that day. That, dear reader, is freedom. So here I am, debt-free, credit repaired, parents in the rear view, future wide open. I hope my story arms someone out there with resolve. May your evidence folders be robust, your lawyer fierce, and your boundaries ironclad. Now I'm shutting down the computer. Sam is queuing up a documentary, and the smell of fresh paint still hangs in the hallway. My hallway. Redemption, it turns out, smells faintly of latex and possibility. And if anyone wonders whether I do it all again, the answer is yes, without hesitation, twice on Sundays, for sure. I never thought I would be the kind of person who posted my life story on Reddit, but after everything that unraveled over the past 6 months, I need strangers more than I need politeness. My friends still look at me with a mix of pity and terror, as if I'm going to leak rage all over their living rooms. Therapy helps, yes, but therapists have to stay neutral, and neutral is the last thing I want right now. I want validation. I want the echo of fury, and maybe I want an audience for the single. I'm 34, married for 8 years to a man I'll call Tom. We met in college, bonded over midnight ramen and shared ambition. He climbed the corporate ladder in logistics. I built a small but thriving graphic design business from our guest bedroom. We made good money, saved aggressively, rarely fought. Our only real argument began 5 years into marriage when we decided it was time for kids and nothing happened. Nothing kept happening for 3 crushing years. I did the usual gauntlet: basal temp charts, ovulation kits, timed intercourse until sex felt like punching a time clock, then medications, then procedures. IUI failed twice. We mortgaged my sanity and half our savings on one round of IVF that ended in an early miscarriage at 7 weeks. Every month after that was a funeral for a baby that never existed. Tom held my hand, wiped my tears, and told me adoption was always an option. He spoke the lines By year 7 of marriage, I had grown used to the steady low-grade grief of infertility. I stopped going to baby showers, muted half my social feed, and funneled my creative energy into client work instead of nursery mood boards. Tom spent longer hours at the office, which I chalked up to stress avoidance. We still loved each other, or so I believed, and I told myself we would come out of the tunnel stronger, parents or not. I would have sworn under oath that he was suffering alongside me, that our pain I was catastrophically wrong. The first crack in the facade appeared on an ordinary Tuesday in November. I was in Tom's home office looking for a shipping label when his work laptop chimed with an email notification. I never snooped before, but the subject line glowed on the screen like a siren. Lily's tuition due. Reminder. My brain snagged on one word, Lily. We didn't know any Lily except his ex-girlfriend from the year before me, a woman named Leah who had an obsession with lilies tattooed along her ribs. That may sound so curiosity outran manners. I clicked. The email was from Small Steps Montessori, addressed to Thomas Richardson and Leah Martinez, reminding them that tuition for their daughter, Lily Martinez Richardson, was overdue. Birth date, March 13, 2020. Age, 5. My marriage was 8. I sat in his chair, reading the email over and over until the words rearranged themselves into knives. Then I opened the chain of prior notices. There were dozens, along with report cards, school photos, and PDFs of payment receipts. Every receipt used a visa ending in digits I recognized as our joint travel card. Tom had been paying private preschool fees with points we supposedly racked up for the vacation we never took because fertility treatments drained discretionary funds. My heart was sprinting, but the rest of me was frozen. I opened his personal Gmail. The password autofilled. He'd always said secrets were poison and transparency was an antidote. In his family label were birthday evites, pediatrician bills, and dance recital videos, all starring a brown-eyed child with Tom's exact dimpled smile. In one clip, Lily stood in a makeshift stage in someone's backyard and shouted, "Hi, Daddy!" The camera shook as my husband's voice answered, "Wave to Mommy too, sweetheart." My vision tunneled. Questions crashed like a hailstorm. Had he fathered Lily before or after we married? Why lie? Why pretend we were fighting the same battle for a child if he already had one tucked away? How could he watch me inject hormones and cry over negative tests while sneaking off to ballet recitals? The betrayal wasn't just the child. It was the theater of empathy he performed nightly in our kitchen. I screenshot every email, downloaded every file, and moved everything into an encrypted folder on my own laptop. Evidence first, breakdown later. Something primal switched on inside me, a cold meticulousness I didn't know I possessed. By the time Tom came home, I was stirring pasta sauce like any other evening, data quietly backing up in the cloud. That night, I lay beside Tom pretending to scroll my phone while he slept. The blue halo of the screen hid my expression. I opened our banking app and traced transfers I'd ignored before. Regular outflows tagged consulting and training, each matching the preschool tuition amounts. The paper trail wasn't even clever. He assumed I'd never look because I trusted him. I didn't confront him. Reddit stories taught me patience is power. The next morning, I called in sick, drove to the courthouse, and requested Lily's birth certificate. Public records aren't hard to get when you toss around the phrase possible insurance fraud. The clerk raised an eyebrow but printed the document. Father, Thomas Eric Richardson. Mother, Leah Ann Martinez. Date of birth, 6 months after our second wedding anniversary. He had conceived a child with his ex while I was injecting fertility drugs that made me sob in supermarket aisles. Casual cruelty on an Olympic level. I Googled Leah, found her LinkedIn, then her Instagram. She posted tasteful photos of clay pottery and toddler art, nothing scandalous. Her profile listed a phone number for custom pottery orders. My hands were shaking when I dialed, but I forced steadiness into my voice. I introduced myself as Marie, a potential customer interested in a custom urn design. Morbid, yes, but it guaranteed her full attention. Leah invited me to her studio that Saturday. I wore jeans, no makeup, hair in a low bun. Not the polished wife she'd remember from Tom's college photos, if she even saw those. Her studio was a converted garage behind a modest bungalow. The place smelled of wet clay and jasmine tea. She greeted me warmly, clay streaked on her cheek. Lily sat at a small table painting a coil pot bright purple. Up close, the resemblance to Tom was undeniable. The same cowlick, the same mischievous eyebrows. She smiled at me, and I felt my sternum crack. I introduced myself simply as Marie and admired her artwork. Leah poured tea. We chatted about glazes, kiln temperatures, and eventually kids. She said parenting solo was hard, but rewarding. I asked, casual as possible, if Lily's dad helped. Leah's shoulders tensed. She said, "He sends money sometimes. He loves her, but his wife doesn't know about us. He can't risk her finding out." She didn't know she was speaking to the wife. The room went silent except for Lily humming to herself. Leah's eyes brimmed, but she blinked the tears back. I felt a jolt of perverse kinship. We were both casualties of Tom's cowardice, collateral to his double life. I thanked her, commissioned a small urn that I had no intention of picking up, and left. In my car, I finally cried. Not the raw, snotty sob of grief, but a precise, surgical weeping that ended as quickly as it began. Vengeance incubates best in cold air. I drove home composing steps, timelines, contingencies. The betrayal was too layered for a single confrontation. It needed structure, theater, and lasting financial consequences. I spent the next month living a double life more convincing than Tom's. By day, I was the supportive spouse, cooking his favorite meals and nodding sympathetically when he complained about supply chain crises. By night, I built a legal minefield. My cousin works for a top-tier family law firm. She referred me to an attorney who specializes in divorce cases involving concealed dependents. We met twice a week. I provided receipts, statements, birth records, and a copy of our prenuptial agreement. Tissue. He'd drafted his own downfall. Parallel to the legal prep, I deepened contact with Leah. I ordered more pottery, brought coffee, listened. I never badmouthed Tom. I wanted her unfiltered perspective. She told me they'd reconnected at a conference, slept together just once, and decided to co-parent quietly because Tom swore his wife was fragile. Leah admitted she hated the arrangement, but Lily deserved a father. On my fourth visit, Leah excused herself to take a phone call. Lily tugged my sleeve and whispered, "Are you Daddy's friend?" My throat tightened. I told her I was a friend of her mom's and that I thought she was very brave. She grinned and showed me her pot painted like a cosmic swirl. That grin solidified my resolve. The kid was innocent and she would not be collateral damage again. I asked Leah if I could take Lily to the zoo one Saturday as thanks for all the pottery work. She hesitated until I offered to pay for everything and promised to keep her updated. She consented, probably glad for a quiet afternoon. On the appointed day, I picked Lily up in my sensible hatchback, strapped her into a booster seat still smelling of new plastic, and drove to the city zoo. We fed giraffes, watched penguins, and shared vanilla ice cream. Lily called me Miss Marie. At lunch, she told me her favorite game was baking mud pies with Mommy and that Daddy visited every other Sunday but never took photos because he says cameras aren't safe. My jaw clenched, but I smiled and asked if she liked surprises. She nodded vigorously. I took her to a photo booth near the reptile house and we snapped 4 goofy pictures. Us sticking tongues out, crossing eyes, doing jazz hands. I printed 2 copies, put one in her tiny backpack, and tucked the other into my wallet. Proof of our day and ammunition for later. When I dropped Lily back home, Leah hugged me. She said Lily hadn't stopped talking about me all afternoon. I drove away feeling something start to heal inside my chest, but the space that healed was immediately occupied by anger hotter than before. No child should feel like a secret. The next step was timing. Our 8th anniversary loomed in March, exactly 2 weeks after Lily's 6th birthday. Tom had booked a private room at our favorite steakhouse and invited both sets of parents plus our closest friends. He said it would lift my spirits and maybe mark the start of a new chapter. His words, not mine. I agreed enthusiastically. Behind the scenes, I accelerated legal actions. My lawyer filed for divorce under the adultery clause on March 10th, placing an automatic restraining order on joint assets. She also filed a motion to enforce the infidelity penalty in our prenup, a 50% transfer of Tom's retirement accounts and full ownership of our house to me. Court dates were set for late April. Tom knew none of it. Meanwhile, I opened a trust fund in Lily's name with the preliminary settlement funds the court froze. It was irrevocable. Tom could neither access nor dissolve it, but he would be required to contribute monthly. I added Leah as custodian and mailed her the paperwork with a letter that began, "You don't know me by this name, but I know you deserve better." I enclosed the second copy of the zoo photo and my direct number. She called that night, sobbing gratitude mingled with shock. I told her lawyers would. I saved the pièce de résistance for the anniversary dinner. The restaurant's private room was glass-walled, overlooking the river. Candlelight reflected off the windows, duplicating every face, perfect for dramatic effect. Guests mingled, sipping wine. I wore a deep red dress I'd bought that afternoon, a shade just shy of scandalous. Tom looked smug and affectionate, greeting everyone, completely unaware that his career, marriage, and reputation were burning down offstage. When the main course was cleared, Tom clinked his glass and began a toast about resilience and love. I let him ramble for exactly 2 minutes, then I stood, interrupting him. Everyone turned. I thanked them for coming, said I had a slideshow to celebrate shared memories, and gestured to the waitstaff who wheeled in a projector. Slide 1, Tom and me on our honeymoon. Ah. Slide 2, Tom and me holding the embryo ultrasound that never became a baby. Sob from my mother. Slide 3, an itemized list of IVF costs highlighted in red. Murmurs. Slide 4, Lily's birth certificate, enlarged. Silence so dense you could taste it. Slide 5, the video of Lily's backyard recital. Tom's voice saying, "Wave to Mommy too." My father swore under his breath. Tom froze, mouth half open. I clicked to slide 6, the zoo photo of Lily and me, timestamped last week. I finished with slide 7, the first page of the divorce filing, bold letters spelling out adultery. Gasps. My lawyer, seated inconspicuously near the door, stood and handed Tom a thick envelope. "You've been served," she announced, because cliches are sometimes perfect. Tom's face drained of color. He tried to speak, but my mother-in-law started sobbing and my dad told him to sit down unless he wanted to be thrown off the balcony. I thanked the guests for their time and apologized for the unconventional entertainment, then handed the server my credit card. I told Tom the bill was on me. Consider it a farewell gift, since half the card balance would soon belong to me anyway. I walked out without looking back. The fallout detonated faster than even I predicted. Tom's parents pulled him aside that same night and demanded answers. He confessed enough to confirm everything, but tried to paint himself as torn between obligations. His mother, who once embroidered matching Christmas stockings for us, moved in with her sister for a week to process the embarrassment. My parents hired a truck and helped me move his remaining clothes into a storage unit under his name. Word reached Tom's employer because Lily had been on his company health insurance under a false dependent code. HR launched an internal audit. By Friday, he was suspended pending investigation for benefits fraud. His corporate phone went dark. He showed up at my house on Saturday, pounding on the door. I opened it just enough for the latch to hold. He looked gaunt, eyes bloodshot, suit unironed. He asked me to talk privately. I said any communication would happen through lawyers. He tried guilt, reminded me of vows, of my miscarriage, of the dog we buried last year. Each memory he weaponized only underscored his hypocrisy. I told him I'd already changed the locks and installed cameras. The police would be called for trespassing if he returned. Leah emailed me Monday. Tom had begged to see Lily, but she was enforcing a cooling-off period advised by her own attorney. She thanked me again for the trust fund and said Lily referred to me as the Zoo Lady. I told her she could share my real name when she felt it appropriate. Court proceedings were smoother than expected because the evidence was overwhelming and Tom's lawyer urged settlement. The judge finalized the divorce in record time, granted me full equity in the house, half his retirement, and mandated child support to the trust. Tom salvaged a small portion of his 401k and the lease on his BMW, which he soon traded for a used sedan to cut expenses. His company fired him 2 weeks later. Word spread in our social circle that he'd falsified dependents and hidden a child. The combination made him radioactive. Job offers evaporated. He moved into a furnished studio on the outskirts of town. I wasn't interested in watching him suffer day by day. I only cared that the structures I built held firm. They did. Every month, the trust received an automatic deposit from his depleted savings. If he defaulted, wage garnishment would kick in once he found employment. People asked if I felt guilty about blowing up Lily's conception of her father. The honest answer is no. She deserves truth, not ghost visits and whispering adults. Leah arranged for child therapy covered by settlement funds. Lily now knows her dad lied, but she also knows adults can choose honesty because I modeled it. That's not trauma, that's resilience training. 2 months post-divorce, I visited Leah and Lily for a pottery painting afternoon. Lily ran to me, waving a mug she'd glazed with bright red hearts. She said it was for my office so I could drink happiness. I hugged her, careful not to crush the mug. Leah and I shared a long, silent look of shared survival. I drove home at sunset with the mug seat-belted beside me. My house felt peaceful, as if the walls exhaled after holding in years of tension. I poured tea into my new mug and sat at the kitchen island alone and content. Revenge isn't supposed to be nourishing, but sometimes justice tastes like chamomile. In the weeks that followed, I learned that a life reduced to one occupant expands in unexpected directions. Mornings were no longer triage of resentment and fake smiles. I woke before dawn, not from anxiety, but from a quiet excitement to reclaim routines. I repainted the guest bedroom, turned it into a studio for my design projects, and accepted a contract with a national nonprofit. Work flooded in after a former client tweeted praise for my empathy-driven branding. The irony made me laugh out. On Tuesdays, I attended a support group for women recovering from partner betrayal trauma. The circle met in the library basement, plastic chairs in an awkward oval. At first, I sat stiff, unsure how much to share. Then I realized I had become a folklore figure in that room. The woman who weaponized a prenup and PowerPoint. They asked me practical questions: how to secure digital evidence, how to protect finances. I answered honestly, and each answer felt like pulling bricks from a wall I'd built around my... One night after group, a woman named Dana walked me to the parking lot and confessed she suspected her husband of having a secret family overseas. She was terrified to confront him. I gave her my attorney's card and promised to attend court if she needed an advocate. Driving home, I realized revenge can scale. Solidarity is its multiplier. Tom attempted a form of counterattack in mid-May. My lawyer forwarded me a letter in which he accused me of alienating Lily's affection and causing undue hardship by revealing the truth. He demanded shared custody rights. The demand was laughable. Leah retained full custody, and I had no legal standing regarding Lily. My attorney filed a response reminding him that he had hidden a child from his wife and shuttled that child through secret meetings, which a judge would interpret as risk. The letter die. Yet he kept pushing. He emailed me late nights, subject lines begging, "Please talk." I miss you. We can fix this. I never replied. I read them, forwarded them to a dedicated folder in case harassment escalated, and then deleted them from my mind. Some emails blamed me for ruining his life. Others pleaded for another chance. The oscillation between self-pity and rage was familiar. Textbook narcissistic supply deficiency. Blocking him would kill the paper trail, so I set filters to quarantine him in. Leah fared better. With part of the settlement money, she expanded her pottery business, hired an assistant, and began offering classes on weekends. Lily loved greeting students and demonstrating basic coil techniques. They sent me photos. Lily proudly holding her first bowl, Leah smiling behind a revamped studio sign that read Martinez Artworks in a new logo I designed pro bono. Early June, Leah invited me to Lily's kindergarten graduation. I debated the optics, then decided truth is cleanest. I showed up in a floral blouse and jeans, sat beside Leah, and cheered when Lily marched across the tiny stage. Tom stood in the back, unshaven and haunting the perimeter like a ghost at his own funeral. Lily waved to her mother, me, and then tentatively to him. He lifted a hand in return, but lowered it quickly when he caught my eye. I held the gaze a second longer than politeness allows. After the ceremony, Lily ran toward us. I knelt for a hug. She presented me a construction paper program with her scribble. I loved the zoo lady. I thanked her. Tom approached. Leah positioned herself between him and Lily. He asked if we could speak privately. I told him no, not without attorneys. He muttered something about unnecessary cruelty. I replied, cruelty was letting your wife inject hormones while you filmed dance recitals, loud enough for 2 PTA moms to overhear. He walked away under That evening, Tom sent one last long email. He admitted everything, claimed shame drove his secrecy, insisted he'd always planned to tell me when the time was right, and ended with a plea for forgiveness. I closed my laptop without reading the final paragraph. I didn't need closure. I already had consequences. Summer arrived, and with it, a vacancy I hadn't anticipated. The dream of motherhood still flickered, but the road looked different now. I researched foster to adopt programs. The orientation session emphasized stability, which I finally possessed. I filled out forms, attended training, and passed the home study easily. In September, I received a placement call for a sibling set, ages 2 and 4, temporarily housed in a group home after an emergency removal. I said yes before the social worker finished. Fostering was chaos in stereo. Sticky hands, tantrum tornadoes, relentless paperwork. It was also the most honest exhaustion I'd ever felt. Nights ended with me collapsing on the couch, face smeared with applesauce, heart unbelievably full. The kids called me Marie, then Mama Marie, a title that both hurt and healed. Hurt because biology is stubborn, healed because love counts labs and DNA as trivia, not prerequisites. Leah volunteered to babysit on weekends. She and Lily would arrive with bags of homemade Play-Doh and leave with leftover mac and cheese. Watching Lily teach the foster kids how to mold tiny animals out of dough felt like witnessing the quiet restoration of multiple futures at once. By December, the caseworker hinted that parental rights might be terminated and suggested I prepare for a permanent adoption petition. I decorated the tree with the kids and hung Lily's red-hearted mug as an ornament. She'd told me it was too special for everyday use. On Christmas Eve, Leah and Lily joined us for cocoa. We sat around the table, hands linked, and Lily declared, with 6-year-old solemnity, that our house was the safest place. I believed her. January marked a full year since the email that blew my life open. I brewed jasmine tea, the scent of Leah's studio, and drank it from Lily's red-hearted mug. Instead of resolutions, I wrote 2 unsent letters, one to my younger self, promising she'd survive, and one to Lily, explaining that truth sometimes masquerades as explosion. Then I shredded both. The living don't need ghosts whispering commentary. A week later, the county prosecutor notified me that Tom had taken a plea deal on a single misdemeanor count of insurance fraud, probation, restitution to the trust, mandatory financial counseling. He'd registered with a temp agency, night shift warehouse work. I read the docket like a weather report. Interesting, but it didn't alter my day. My own docket was busier. The foster siblings in my home were moving toward adoption. Court set the final hearing for July. Leah and Lily threw themselves into celebration plans. Ceramic nameplates for the kids, hand-painted invitations shaped like zoo tickets. Watching Lily paint felt like watching history rewrite itself in brighter ink. Tom tried once more to breach the perimeter. In March, during my routine filing at the clerk's office, I bumped into him. He'd grown thinner, hair flecked with gray, a man whose choices had aged faster than his body. He managed a hesitant hello. I nodded, nothing more. Later, he emailed a 5-line apology ending with, "I hope you find happiness." I forwarded it to the legal archive and pressed delete. July came, and with it the adoption hearing. The judge let the kids bang his gavel. Cameras clicked as their grins filled the courtroom. Leah, Lily, my parents, and a handful of friends cheered. Afterwards, we went to the zoo, our accidental tradition. Lily led the group past the giraffes and whispered to my son, "This is where Mama Marie became the best." My throat tightened, but I kept walking, hand in hers. Summer blurred into school supply lists and midnight design deadlines. Leah's pottery classes flourished. Lily started first grade. My kids learned the joy of trampoline sprinkler days. Happiness looked ordinary on the outside, but inside it felt like revolution. News of Tom drifted in occasionally. Probation check-ins, steady payments to Lily's trust, a rented room near the distribution center. A mutual friend said he'd joined a financial accountability group. I filed the detail away with equal parts relief and indifference. Consequences were teaching him far better than rage ever could. In October, Leah and I ran a booth at the town craft fair. Her ceramics, my branding services, the kids selling painted stones for pocket money. A local journalist snapped a photo and asked our story. We told her it was about rebuilding, nothing more. The article ran with the headline, "From Shards to Art, 2 Moms, 1 Unusual Friendship." No clickbait, no scandal, just resilience quietly spelled out. Thanksgiving stuffed our small house to capacity. My parents, Leah's parents, 3 kids, 1 golden retriever puppy, and a pie for every adult. After dinner, my cousin, the lawyer, nudged me and whispered, "Best courtroom drama I've seen outside HBO." We laughed until cranberry sauce threatened a comeback. On New Year's Eve, the children twirled sparklers in the backyard while Leah and I counted down on a phone timer. Midnight popped, fireworks cracked, no ghosts appeared. She asked if I regretted the slideshow. I answered truthfully, "I regret needing it, not delivering it." She clinked her soda bottle to mine. Life doesn't grant neat epilogues. It gives Tuesday mornings with forgotten lunchboxes, Wednesdays with unexpected client praise, and Friday nights where someone quietly asks for a bedtime story that turns into 3. Somewhere in that hum, I realized my narrative had shifted. The core wasn't betrayal, not even revenge. It was construction of trust funds, of children's rooms, of friendships fired in kilns of shared pain. Tom exists outside those walls now, a cautionary footnote paying literal interest on his secrets. I don't forgive him and never will, but I don't need to keep staring at the wreckage to prove it happened. The house is loud with cartoon theme songs and the scrape of clay on wheel, proof enough. Every so often, Lily still asks to visit the zoo. I always say yes, because saying yes is the opposite of hiding. One Saturday this spring, we stood by the penguin exhibit, the 3 kids pressed against the glass. Lily grinned up at me and said, "Today is perfect." I thought about embryos, broken vows, courtrooms, slide decks, and how all of it led here. Perfect isn't spotless, it's honest. As we left, she slipped her hand into mine and asked if we could bring Daddy next time. I knelt to meet her eyes and said, "That's up to him. We never keep good things secret." She nodded, satisfied with an answer that balanced hope and reality. We walked out into the bright, mundane afternoon. The weather didn't matter. We were too busy living. 3 days ago, I got a plain white envelope in the mail. Inside was a single Polaroid, Lily standing beside a towering sunflower she'd grown for a school science project. On the back, she'd printed, with careful first-grader letters, "Thank you for helping me grow." No signature, but none needed. I tacked it above my desk, right next to the framed zoo photo that started everything. That corner of my office has become a tiny shrine, not to vengeance, but to the power of revealed truth. The slideshow remote, now batteryless, rests beside Leah's first practice mug and a crumpled sticky note listing our IVF medication schedule. I keep those relics visible to remind myself that stories don't stay buried. They compost into the soil of who we become. When visitors ask about the objects, I tell them the short version. I found out my husband had a secret kid, so I burned the secrecy down. They laugh, then pause, realizing laughter is exactly the right response. Season after season, the blooms keep multiplying against every expectation. It means the fire has cooled, the rebuilding worked, and the garden is finally growing.